Recorded at the WNDU 16 News Now studios, this is the South Bend Tribune's Pot of Gold Notre Dame Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, columnist Tom Noy, Notre Dame football beat writer Mike Baradino, and WNDU's Jackson Deal.
He is Jackson, he is Mike, I am Tom, and this is, as the announcer man said, another edition of Pot of Gold for the week of October 16th. Notre Dame ranked number 11 in the USA Today coaches poll, 5-1, going to Georgia Tech, 5-2. The game will not be played in Midtown at Bobby Dodd Stadium, or whatever they call it these days. It will be moved downtown to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Kickoff is 3:30 p.m. ESPN has the telecast. Jackson, let's set the stage.
Sounds good to me.
All right, fellas, we talked way back when it was time for Notre Dame to open the home season against Northern Illinois, and I said one sure way you can tell there's a home game this week was you were driving to the studio that day, and all the porta potties were out around campus, so you knew it was a home game. One sure way. What do you think the one sure way is to know that there's finally a road game for Notre Dame this week? Their first plane flight in 46 days since the Texas A&M game. Mike, what would you guess would be the one sure indication that Notre Dame is playing a game away from home this week?
18 wheels.
There you go. Yes, he nails it. Walking out of the Irish Athletics Center last night, the 18-wheeler is parked in front of the Guglielmo Athletic Center.
The who?
The Goog. for the first time since Purdue. And I have to, as I walked by, the back was open because they were already loading stuff into it.
Oh, you looked in?
I did look in. Well, you can look in because as I'm walking toward the Bulla parking lot where my car was after access, you have no choice but to look in because it's it's straight ahead of you. You're walking right toward it before you have to veer around it the way they have it parked. So the one takeaway I take from that, somebody on this coaching staff really, really, really needs their Diet Coke. Because there are cases of it stacked in that thing, along with water and Gatorade and some other beverages, I believe. But, man, there's a lot of Diet Coke in there.
You better hope it's a coach and not a player. But, knowing that Marcus enjoys his Starbucks, has to have his Starbucks every day, I'm thinking the Diet Coke might be in the mix, or maybe the coordinators, too. They would pull rank. It's a lovely drink. I've kicked it. I kicked it a while ago.
Never had one. Never will have one.
Diet Coke even?
Nope.
Oh, really?
You don't have coffee?
I don't drink coffee. I don't drink caffeine.
At all?
I don't drink alcohol.
Never had. You're not a Mormon?
Nope. Not that I know of.
And so how did that happen?
I don't know. It just
was that a family thing that was imposed upon you?
No, it was just one.
Is that you were raised by Marv Marinovich? Or?
I gave up caffeine and fast food in 2012 because I spent way too much time at airport fast food places traveling in the Big East. That was back when I traveled every single game.
Wow.
So that was a lot of road trips.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of McDonald's and a lot of fast food and a lot of everything else. And I'm like, man, I'm tired of eating this.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of drinking this. So I was done.
But you're saying you never had caffeine, ever?
No, I've had caffeine before.
You stopped
I just stopped in 2012 too. With that,
well, that's impressive.
Doing this job with no caffeine's got to be tough.
No. This is an easy job.
There you go, exactly.
So speaking of Georgia Tech, we're going to wind up burying the lead on this, but I got a couple more things to get to before we get to the big news of the week. Notre Dame leads the all-time series 36-1. They've won 3 straight, 4 of the last 5. Last meeting, Notre Dame wins it at home, 2021, 55-0, and the last Georgia Tech win, 33-3 at Notre Dame Stadium. I believe I cut off the date on that, but I think that's 2007. So those are some numbers for Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. But the big news of the week, like I said, we buried the lead on this, which is something we should never do as journalists. Marcus Freeman, I think, stunned all of us in the room on Monday when he stepped in front of the microphones. And he's going through the injuries, and he's talking about Mitch Jeter, and he's talking about Jordan Faison. And, Billy Strouth, he's questionable. And then he drops the 10,000-pound sack of stun on us. and says, basically, oh, by the way, our All-American cornerback, the guy that's supposed to be a first-round draft pick in the spring, Benjamin Morrison, well, he's going to miss the rest of the year with a hip injury. He's going to have surgery. He's done. He didn't say it, but his college career basically is over. I don't see him coming back for another year when he was already targeted to be a first-round draft pick and then delaying that because he gets hurt. Benjamin Morrison. Mike, were you as stunned as everybody else was in that room that day?
I wasn't expecting season-ending surgery, but we've been monitoring just from. He's never shown up on the injury report, but at A&M he had to leave the field for a while, a few plays, and seemed to have lower body issues. You're thinking maybe cramps, maybe hamstring, but he got back in so quickly. I think he missed 5 plays.
Mm-hmm.
The Louisville game, you spotted on the sideline.
He was going up the tunnel.
Yeah,
he went up the tunnel, I think, in the first half of the Louisville game.
Yeah, and
but then jogged back
early in the second half. That's when Jordan Clark had to move outside and the whole spitting and the hitting and stuff. So, but he missed 12 plays, but came back, and had a huge potentially strip sack that off the corner blitz. So he seemed to be normal Benjamin Morrison, but and also before the game. This past time against Stanford, he brought out, he kind of did his own stretch early with a foam roller on the side, and I don't remember him doing that. He had one of those little half foam rollers, but you couldn't really tell if it was just a tight quad or something. But for it to be season ending, it does give him time at this point to recover from it in time for the hugely important run up to a draft to maybe be available for what he's trying to do in his professional career, trying to play through it for a team with national championship aspirations. I don't know if that was even a possibility, but this does, the timing of it does give him a chance, as you say, to let that be his final game and still make his way, maybe not as high as into the first round, but if he fully recovers, he was talked about top half of the first round. So we'll miss watching him, and this team just lost. You could make the case, Jackson, that this was the most vital piece, the most championship quality piece of the entire roster. There's others, Xavier Watts,
yeah,
Leonard, but Xavier Watts is hugely important, but he can't shut down a whole side of the field. And a corner shut down Now, Ben Morrison, you can look back and say, we kind of had noticed that his percentage of giving up completions in his area was not normal for him. He was a little more vulnerable than he had been because obviously he was playing through something. This didn't just fall out of the sky, it would appear. But Jackson, were you? Where does it go from here?
I mean, where does it go from here? The 3 scholarship corners left on the roster right now. That's especially with the Jaden Mickey news coming just 2 weeks ago or so. There's just, when you look at that depth chart and you just see Carson Hobbs listed as the only backup at every single position.
Carson Hobbs, freshman. Leonard Moore, freshman.
Yeah, there's just no depth right now. And you're right, I think championship piece. I mean, you go through, I think we're going to talk about if we can talk about the college football playoff later, but when you look at the top teams in the country, every single team has a number 1 wide receiver, and Morrison was your guy to go up and shut that down. You lose that. Now you just have freshmen and sophomores.
Not only do you lose that, but we're sitting here halfway through the schedule, and Notre Dame has lost its starting left tackle, its shutdown corner, and its starting center from this team. That's a pretty tall order to go through the final.
Top 2 Vipers
and the two Viper defensive ends. So those are, if you were making a list other than maybe Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love as guys you didn't want to see get hurt this year, the left tackle, the center, a Viper, and the shutdown corner would all be on that list. And now they have to go play a Georgia Tech team that's a little banged up because now for the second week in a row, Notre Dame's going to play an opponent with a quarterback that may or may not play in Haynes King.
Yeah, he's got a throwing hand issue, although they don't confirm even the body part down there at Georgia Tech. Brent Key, just speaking in generalities, day to day, a throwing hand issue. I would imagine he'll try to give it a go. He's also he can beat you with his legs, so hugely important. But the backup quarterback, and I know I'm going to screw this up even on this, but what a name for football! But Zach Pyron, not Pylon, and not Chiron.
Yes,
but Pyron, and he's from Pinson, Alabama, and he's a youngin. as well. It looks like a redshirt sophomore. So Marcus Freeman saying, he didn't think the offense would change too much depending on the two guys, but because basically I don't think Zach Pyron is going to be a guy that'll come in and throw it around. But Haynes King, former Texas A&M guy, one of the guys that got out of there along with Max Johnson in the changeover. And I would expect we'll see him. What do you think, Tom?
Georgia Tech has won 2 straight. They've won 3 of 4. This game was originally way back in 2020 scheduled to be played where it's going to be played on Saturday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They moved that back to Bobby Dodd Stadium on Halloween in 2020. How do I know it was Halloween? Because I was there watching Georgia Tech and Notre Dame play back during the COVID season. So they're going to play this one downtown. Georgia Tech, Jackson, what's the biggest concern with Notre Dame going on the road? Not a true road game, but going on the road basically for the first time in over a month since they waxed Purdue 66-7.
Well, I mean, I don't know if going on the road is necessarily something you're worried about. This Notre Dame team, it seemed like in their couple road games against Purdue, against Texas A&M, 2 of the best days for this Notre Dame team we've seen all season, especially that A&M win as A&M continues to win. So I don't know if the road trip is really, I'm really too worried about that. I just think we just talk about with Haynes King, a dual threat quarterback like that. If he's playing, if he's all right, he can cause just a lot of problems, especially like we just mentioned, this with a secondary that's now very, very thin.
And Notre Dame will have to go against a pretty good running back for the first time since basically all year. Now you can say, who is the Northern Illinois running back?
Ontario Brown.
Ontario Brown. Well, what about Ontario Brown? Well, he didn't play the previous week before he went for whatever he went for against Notre Dame, so he doesn't really count. I think this is going to be a tough task for Notre Dame because of what they're dealing with all the injuries, with the fact that it's a game. It should be kind of a home field advantage for Notre Dame at Mercedes-Benz, but this is Notre Dame's only true, quote in quotes, true ACC road game this year. It's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird situation.
It is a weird situation right there with that. I mean, it will be rare Georgia Tech is, but I think you're right to say that. I don't know how, with a stadium that big, I'm imagining a good number of Irish fans in attendance.
It'll be Irish probably 60-40.
Yeah.
If that, maybe, kind of. Mike, what do you think?
Sounds good.
You like that, huh? You like that.
I don't want too much indoor noise because I only bring so many, ibuprofen on the road. So I don't really want to walk out of there with one of those road headaches like Syracuse. That was kind of loud, I thought.
Syracuse is one of the loudest stadiums I've ever been in, just because of how the noise just gets trapped. Yeah,
this shouldn't be a problem. Massive. I've never been in the new dome. I've been in the old Georgia Dome several times.
I think the crowd noise that they piped in during practice yesterday is going to be louder than what they're going to hear on Saturday.
I would agree, and that's how you should be. You should always be a little harder in practice than in reality.
All right, so that's our Georgia Tech talk. Hey, Jackson, how about a little Irish rewind? What's more newsworthy, the fact that Notre Dame scored 49 unanswered points in beating the Stanford Cardinal 49-7 last Saturday, or the second ever lightning delay in Notre Dame Stadium history? This was not hours long as it was in 2010, maybe 2011 against South Florida. This was only 60 minutes long. So the first time in program history, Notre Dame wins a delayed game inside Notre Dame Stadium.
Are we sure that?
No, we're not sure of anything.
Since the 1800s, and I know that you feel that somehow it has been, you like that, this was the first win, but I didn't put that in my TTP that it was the first win for sure because
I'm going to say it.
We don't know what was happening when they were playing Goshen College in the 1800s and local high schools.
South Bend Riley in the 1885.
There was one of those games where they're like, Sky doesn't look too good. What should we do?
Go back through the Tribune archives.
Have you done that?
No, I'm not doing that.
So it's a leap that
I'll make that leap.
You did too late. And you're over the canyon. I'm not. Jackson's with me.
No, maybe against odds are in 1890 against the South Bend Athletic Club. You never know if it was like
doctors and obstetricians. There's quite a chance that those doctors were not comfortable with a little lightning within 8 miles.
You're talking to a guy who doesn't know what happened in 1990. He's not going to care what happened in 1890.
I'm just saying,
We're going to have Mark O. Hubbard back on here and get to the bottom of delays, at least under the era Parsegian era.
There you go.
So Notre back on track.
Okay.
We'll effort that maybe. You can effort. How about you go through the record book as you travel to Atlanta this week? That'll be all you.
I just exhausted myself looking back at to get that. I worked hard on that Jeremiah Love touchdown streak note because you noted during the game. Well, it's now an official game. He's scored a touchdown. 7 straight games now with a touchdown, and it's all in the South Bend Tribune. It's all laid out for you. What's at stake this weekend if he can stretch that streak to 8, and then I'll just say that 10 is as much as I could find going back more than a quarter century. Autry Denson scored, he just scored again, and he had a streak of 10. That was his maximum. So that's the next bar. But anyway, I've done my research.
All-time leading rusher in program history for you, Jackson. Just in case. as you're sitting there saying, "Who the heck is Autry Denson?"
Now
I've heard
coaching
that
with
name,
the
right?
Cardinals, Arizona Cardinals. Yeah.
Riley Leonard, 16 of 22, 229 yards for 3 touchdowns. 11 different receivers caught at least one pass, including, this was not on anybody's hot take,
No.
center Pat Coogan, 1 reception for 11 yards. And he said afterwards that's the first time he's ever touched the football, which isn't true because he touches it on every play if he's the center.
There you go.
In a context in which he can gain yardage, he just left that part out. But
Total
look
yards.
good, Cougs with putting the head down,
Barreling ahead. Total yards, Notre Dame 477 to 200. Drake Bowen, the aforementioned Drake Bowen, 7 tackles. Jaden Osbury 6. Josh Burnham back from the ankle, still says it's he's not going to say how well he is, but he's obviously not 100%. He's at 5 tackles, and we only saw James Rendell once, and that was kind of good because he only punted once for 24 yards on Saturday.
And that was described as a bad punt
By
by Marcus
who?
Freeman
That's
front of everyone. He was still salty about it, and there was no euphemism there. We had a bad punt, and I certainly used that in my analysis. But I think Rendell indoor again. We'll get a chance to. I don't know. Maybe that's a problem. I mean, he practices indoor at the facility, but yeah, he needs to. He still hasn't given you that 75-yard punt.
Maybe that'll be my hot take this week, since it's indoors. He's going to hit the scoreboard at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
All right, Jackson.
Jackson, what do you got from Stanford? Anything? How did you spend the delay, by the way, other than talking to me in the press box?
Penn State USC. That game was coming down to the wire. Right?
They put that on in the press box, and then when the game came back, they left the USC Penn State game on TV.
I will admit there was a Purdue the Purdue Illinois game that came right down to the wire right as Penn State USC came down to the wire. I think the game Notre Dame was back on by then, but I was a little preoccupied for those 3 minutes watching that.
All right, is that all we have for Notre Dame Stanford? Notre Dame moves. They've won 4 in a row. They're 5-1, and Stanford's not very good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, that's it.
Legends Trophy.
Well, we're not talking. Who cares about trophies?
It's a really cool looking trophy. I will say that
It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful trophy.
Does anybody really care when Marcus gets up there and says, "Well, we won a trophy game"?
The idea of drinking the red Kool-Aid, which is that I remember seeing Brian Kelly do that. Is that where it started, or does it?
I don't know.
The actual.
That was a cool video, though. I like that.
Powerade or Kool-Aid, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's Kelly would do that. And now they do that, and they even pass it around. And but it seems like with liquid inside of it, it gets a little slippery. It's dangerous with such a beautiful crystal Waterford crystal bowl. But that might be it. That might I think they'll work it out through the ACC, but I don't know that they're going to play every year now. What do you think, Tom? What's your feeling? You don't really seem to care if they do or don't, right? On that.
No,
one?
I'd like to go. I like the fact that Notre Dame has a chance to go to California every year.
But just in terms of the rivalry,
I don't think it's much of a rivalry. They got to get better.
Yeah.
They got to get better.
They're
Stanford,
not really trying.
They're 3. That's 3 in a row. I don't know if they how invested are they in football, because they're so all sports oriented out at Stanford, with every sport imaginable, volleyball, soccer. I think
Women's basketball, just
Women's
one
Women's
other one.
basketball, but I think, and I'm trying to remember, I think I may have picked Stanford 18th in the ACC preseason men's basketball poll. Like it was just here. We used to do this with Pittsburgh and Boston College. You start with 1 to 18, and the minute you go to 18, you put that team in there. It was Pitt. It used to be Pitt, used to be BC, and now it's Stanford. Where, yeah, they have a lot of good sports programs, but they're high visibility men's programs, men's basketball and football. They stink.
It's an Olympic sport.
Baseball
kind of
has
program.
a proud tradition. It's
Right.
down a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, baseball.
They need to pick it up.
So who knows what happens with Stanford? Like, it's usually the end of the game, the last year or the last game of the year. Is it going to be that way next year? People at Notre Dame even don't know. So TBD with the future of Stanford and Notre Dame. But it would be weird to have to play for Notre Dame to have to play one of its ACC games and go out to Stanford in like September.
I could see a scenario where Cal and Stanford become they kind of split that slot on the schedule year. They kind of rotate so that and make it such that Notre Dame would end the year every other year in the non-USC year at either Cal or Stanford. So you're still in the Bay Area, but you
Right.
got you got 2 ACC
Yeah.
teams right there in the Bay Area for now.
Ideally, that would be a great scenario. But again, you're talking about the Atlantic Coast Conference, and the Atlantic Coast Conference is not going to do Notre Dame any scheduling favors. Like Notre Dame could say, "Hey, we'd love to if we're going to play Stanford and Cal, we'll play either Stanford or Cal every other year to end the season. But can we do it in November?" And the ACC will say, and I speak from men's basketball experience on this, the ACC will say, "We'll take it under advisement." And then
do opposite.
the following year they'll open at Cal. Like it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? Like a
It
couple
is
years. A quick basketball story. A couple years ago, when Notre Dame played Georgia in a neutral site game in Atlanta in December, and Mike Bray and that program they said you're going to. The league said you're going to play a league game in early December. So Notre Dame said, that's great. We're in Atlanta. We're playing Georgia on Saturday. We have to play a league game on Tuesday. Why don't you just keep us here and we'll go up to Georgia Tech and we'll open against Georgia Tech? Mm-hmm. And the league said, we'll take that under advisement and send them to Tallahassee instead. So, that's what you get with the ACC when it comes to Notre Dame. No scheduling favors. So we'll see what happens with the future of Stanford and Notre Dame moving forward. So that's moving forward. Jackson, let's move back to the pot of old. Okay, this was like a no-brainer. This was the easiest pot of old to do, and it's like, as I said on the sheet here, is there any doubt what the pot of old is this week?
Rudy?
No, it wasn't Rudy. See, you know why he says that, Jackson? Because he didn't read the email that I sent him. That's why he's like,
I know he
I
did.
copied it and pasted it.
See? He hasn't read it. I could put in there, we're gonna discuss Mike Berardino's 10 favorite road trips, and be like, huh? What? When did that come from? So Tuesday.
I like to keep it fresh.
Tuesday, the 36-year anniversary of Catholics versus convicts.
That's right.
I went back and watched the 30
And
for
Kirk
30.
Gibson that night.
You ruined it. That was going to be my bonus question. What also happened
I just solved it.
on October 15th? And Jackson's like, huh? Who's Kirk Gibson?
Kirk Gibson. Dodgers, right?
There you go.
Yeah, come on.
Catholics versus convicts. That's how I spent after I transcribed my interviews last night. I watched the 30 for 30.
Yeah, that was good.
Catholics versus convicts. Notre Dame 31, Miami 30. Miami comes to town, ranked number 1 in the country. Notre Dame is number 4. A couple of big plays in that game. The Cleveland Gary fumble and the Lamont Brown touchdown catch. Those would have been overturned in today's day and age. That was not a fumble by Cleveland Gary. I don't care what George Streeter says. He wasn't. He was down. Should have been a first and goal at the 1. And Lamont Brown did not make a catch in the corner of the end zone, and the near side official signal touchdown. So Pat Terrell knocks away the 2-point conversion. Notre Dame wins 31-30. Notre Dame, in researching that game, I was surprised to see that Miami has been back to South Bend only twice since that 1988 game, in 1990 and 2016. And Miami is on the schedule next year in South Florida. So all meals will be paid for by South Florida native Mike Berdino.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them. Ooh,
We're all going.
I like that road trip.
Although I think Mike might be the only one going to that one.
We're all week to week, fellas.
Catholics versus convicts. Any reference point for you, Jackson?
I actually read a book about this growing up, and I've seen the 30 for 30. It's like, even it's just such a legendary thing. It was kind of controversial, right? The whole, like, the shirt with Catholics versus convicts. Like, the Notre Dame team was kind of, like, little tough to embrace it at first, right? There was, like, a kind of controversy with that.
A lot of controversy.
Yeah.
So, it was a great game. It was a great day. I remember watching TV, the game on TV from Dayton, Ohio. I was a junior in college. And it was not like today, let's put it that way, weather-wise. So, Catholics versus convicts, pot of old. Back on Pot of Gold and back with a guest spotlight. Today, it is Gene Watson, the Chicago White Sox Director of Player Personnel. No, we are not here to talk about the White Sox and how many games they didn't win or how many games they did lose this year. We're here to talk about Notre Dame because for some reason, and my first question is, how does a guy from Temple, Texas wind up being a Notre Dame fan?
Well, it's great being with you guys. My grandfather, Don Cameron, was from Chicago and really my whole life raised me on Notre Dame football and the Chicago Cubs. And so he was a military man that moved to Texas, Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas. And all I knew my whole entire life was there were two games on the weekends, University of Texas and Notre Dame. And my first actual Notre Dame football game was the 78 Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And so very cold that day, but a great day for the Irish. And that's really where my love began back in the mid-'70s.
Okay, so it wasn't really Midwest cold. It was just Dallas cold because they're not used to that down there, right?
Right. Well, it was a lot of ice. It actually iced that day. The sun was out, but it was extremely cold. And I was 9 at the time, so it's always a little bit colder.
Okay, so your favorite Notre Dame player, obviously from stemming from that game, was it Chris Haynes or was it Joe Montana?
It was Joe Montana all the way, absolutely. Vegas, Ferguson. I was a big Ken McAfee guy. I loved Ken McAfee, Bob Golick. I mean, those were guys that I really admired at the time. And on the flip side, Earl Campbell, I was a big fan of Earl from the UT side and have gotten to know him over the years, living in Austin the last 25 years. And so just a special day. And anytime those two teams can match up, it's a real special day for our family.
That was your first Notre Dame game anywhere, but when was your first trip to Notre Dame Stadium and the whole South Bend area?
I spoke to the baseball program in a baseball camp in January of about 2008 when I was with the Kansas City Royals. Sherrard Klingsdale, one of the assistant coaches at Notre Dame, he and I worked together with the Atlanta Braves, and he invited me up. I'll never forget how cold and snowy it was. It was absolutely spectacular. That was a big shock for a guy from Texas that had never been to South Bend, but it means so much to me. I love the campus. I get back probably 3 or 4 times a year. Whenever I can cover the South Bend Cubs in minor league coverage, I do what I can to be in the city. It just means so much to me.
Gene Watson, thanks for doing this. So you're there at the Cotton Bowl when Notre Dame wins its penultimate championship to this point. You've got 2 World Series rings, right? 2, the Royals and the Marlins, 2015 Royals. How close, you've been around this team now, you've seen them live again. How close is this thing to championship level?
Well, it begins with Marcus Freeman. I'm just so impressed with Marcus, and we correspond with each other from time to time. And I'm so impressed with his leadership. And in today's climate of college football, where you've got the transfer portal and the NIL and everything that's involved, to me, Marcus just embodies everything that you would look for in a head coach in identifying with today's student athletes and the families across the country that it's more than just about the NIL. It's more than just about going someplace and if it's not working out, hitting the portal. It's about the University of Notre Dame and just a higher standing of excellence. And that's where I think Marcus is just the right guy for the job. I've got a number of friends on staff. John Waggle, the director of sports performance, and I were together in Kansas City. Matt Jansen, who's involved in recruiting, Nick Sebastian, one of the offensive line coaches. You're around these guys, and you've been around championship cultures and championship environments, and they just all bleed, a winning attitude, a bigger than college football kind of mentality. And I really truly believe that Marcus has the people in place and the structure in place to eventually win a championship in South Bend.
Wait, so how do you develop a relationship with Marcus Freeman?
It was Brooks Boyer, our director of Brooks. It works for us, and it was Notre Dame game last year, Notre Dame Day at Guaranteed Rate, and I actually wasn't with the White Sox. I was still with the Royals, and Perry Manasseh, and the general manager of the Angels, and I are sitting in his suite, and we look across, and there's Marcus and the entire coaching staff. So we go over and sit and talk with them. And the first question I asked him was what position he played in baseball, because he looks like a shortstop or a center field physically. But no, it was a great day to get to know those guys, and really special for me.
Did you give him some of the advice on throwing out a first pitch, because he's gotten better at it now? The first couple reps, I mean, what an honor first of all, but what a knee knocker. And he said at some point he learned just aim high. What did you tell him, old lefty?
I didn't tell him anything, but that's what you have to do. I've been involved in advising a lot of people about first pitches, and the thing you want to do is, one, you go from the rubber so nobody gives you a hard time, but two, you throw it as hard as you can to the top of the catcher's mask and really get that good extension out in front and hope that it gets to the plate. And I've had the good fortune of counseling a lot of people on it, but never having done it.
Worst first pitch, who would it be?
Oh my gosh, there's a few. Travis Kelce's wasn't great.
Hey, Gene, I just saw a story the other day, and I guess this is a brand new thing, where USC, did you see where USC allows even visiting fans now to pay up to $1,800 and run out of the tunnel at the Coliseum? And a Penn State fan did that in full Penn State gear, and my mind immediately went to Thanksgiving weekend. I'm expecting to see you come running out of that tunnel. Right, you got to be right behind USC, of course, and you can't, be shoving anybody over or anything. No tackling. But what a weird thing. Is that something you'd like to do? And did you know this?
No, I didn't know that, but they've done such a great job of fan involvement with all sports and getting people involved. And, I do go down on the sidelines before the games in South Bend, and that's a great experience. That turf can really hurt your hips, I can tell you that. But I do have the jersey and I do have the helmet if you guys want to try to make that happen. I think we can get it done.
So we're going to do a GoFundMe. We need $1,800. Send Gene Watson to the field for run out between. It looked like it's between the Trojans and then the visiting team. But this guy was trying to hype up the Penn State people, and that's a wild one. They've got to do everything they can to pay Lincoln Riley out there for now, or to get ready for the buyout. So, Jackson.
Yeah, Gene, I have a question about this Notre Dame football team. I'm wondering, have you gotten a chance to look at Drake Bowen at all, a player for the Irish that also plays a little bit of baseball?
Ooh, look at that. Baseball question.
Nice.
Yeah, I got to get something in there for him.
What a great player. And, that's one of the things that I think Notre Dame can kind of hedge on. And I've said this to people at Notre Dame, is we're in such a generation of athlete that there's a lot of two-sport players out there. My son was actually a two-sport player. He was a kicker and a left-handed pitcher and recruited in both. And from the very beginning, I saw Notre Dame as a target because of the environment, the culture academically. And if there's a place where I think you can get it done, it's at Notre Dame. And when you look at what they stand for on the football program from a standpoint of academics and a level of excellence, and then you look at where baseball is today across the United States, it being a very middle to upper income sport, it's very expensive to play, but the players that are playing it are very high academic players. So I've been pretty vocal with the people that I'm close to at Notre Dame about how if there was a system that could be set up for the two-sport athlete. Obviously, Smarja was a guy that did it. There have been a few over the years. Torrey Hunter Jr. was a guy that did it. Yeah, there have been a few over the years. But moving forward into the future, I really feel like this could be a competitive advantage for Notre Dame because of the size of the school, the size of the city, the academics that are involved, and just where amateur baseball is in the United States, I really think it's something where Notre Dame could gain a competitive advantage in.
What was it like seeing Notre Dame in the College World Series in 22?
It was so great. And, I was with the Angels in 21 and got to be close with Nico Cavadis' family, Jim and Robin, who live in South Bend, and just a wonderful family. And Jack Brannigan was a guy that I really loved. Tanner Colehep was a guy that was high on my board that we were going to take in the 4th round in 21. And we took a shot at taking him in the 5th, and the Tigers got him 7 picks before us. But just for Link Jarrett to pull that off, what a tremendous accomplishment, but also, again, a sign of where college baseball is from an amateur standpoint moving into college baseball. Notre Dame fits the bill of a school that can be successful. And I know they've got a lot of good things going on in the baseball program right now, and they're very excited about the freshman class that just came in.
How difficult is it to be successful in the North? Because you have to play against such weather conditions. Like, it doesn't get nice here until mid-May, and then by then, season's almost over.
I think you've got to have a special brand of athlete. I think you have to know, what you're trying to identify, and you're looking for grinder type players, which kind of embodies the Midwest. I mean, if you look at the draft in the past 15 to 20 years, it was very Southern dominated. But you look now, and there's a lot of kids from Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana being drafted, a lot of kids in the Northeast, especially the Boston area, being drafted. And I think that the climate that's existing in amateur baseball, with a lot of the showcase baseball and the way kids travel and communicate with each other, I think it's a little bit easier now than it's ever been.
Gene Watson, you have to ascertain makeup of players to decide if there's someone you want to invest in, believe in. It's not just about the ability. When you watch a Notre Dame football game, or just any football game, the eyes that you have for that, how can you decide, how can you ascertain the makeup of a football player? What jumps out to you maybe about somebody we haven't even considered is just like a winning player here at Notre Dame?
Well, I think it's so outstanding what they do, and it is something that I really pay attention to. I went to the baseball practice Saturday morning before the football game, and just the whole environment, both football and baseball. Went to the women's basketball practice with you on Friday, and just what you have at Notre Dame that is so unique and so special is, going into your time at Notre Dame that you've got to want to be a part of something bigger than you. It's not about you. And I think that all these student athletes and their families understand that. And that's really what makes Notre Dame special, is that there's a level of excellence that's uncompromising. There's no excuse making. We expect to be champions in the classroom and champions on the field, as it's often said. But just that's one of the things I really, really pay attention to when I walk into environments is how are the players interacting with each other when there's a little adversity. I was on the sidelines for the Sun Bowl last year. There wasn't a lot of adversity during that game, but if something went wrong in the game, when they come off the field, what are their actions? What's their body language? How are they interacting with their coaches and teammates? And I think that kind of that encompasses what the identity of the University of Notre Dame is with their student athletes is. All of them know it's not about me. I want to be a part of something bigger than me, and this is something that's going to carry me for the rest of my life after my time is done in South Bend.
Wait, you went to baseball, you went to women's basketball. What about the men's basketball program? Let's go.
Man, I hear it's coming. I've heard great things about that recruiting class, and
that's because you read all about it in the South Bend Tribune, right?
Yes, and I was actually fortunate enough to speak to the honor students at the Mendoza Business School on Friday, which was a thrill. And so just, I wasn't a good enough student to go to Notre Dame. I certainly wasn't a good enough athlete, but it's been a big part of my life, my entire life. And just to be just a small part of it in some way is a true honor.
Okay, you say you weren't a good enough athlete, but you were a 3-sport standout in high school. And then this little nugget that I came across from your bio, you struck out 20 batters in one game? What was that?
Yeah, against my parents' high school, Killeen High School, and we weren't very good at all, and they definitely weren't very good. So it was a good night for the changeup and the curveball.
The off speed always gets them.
Gene, when you do speak over at Mendoza, which is, you're on quite a roster there of people they pass through. I mean, champions of industry and champions of, you've been a champion of your industry. So what do you try to get across? And I believe you do a little, you're kind of with an eye of the future of who might be able to be placed into pro sports, because you have friends across the gamut in all sports. What is that experience like for you? What's maybe your main message? What was your message on Friday? And then how interested are all your friends in sports about who you found as a prospect to go work in sports?
Well, it's really just in today's society where there's so much life of comparison for these young student athletes, it's really important to me just to come along and encourage them and let them know that while the future seems really uncertain and they've got a lot of doubt and questions as to what the future is going to look like, just to know that everything's going to be okay. And if they just put their head down and they work hard and they pour into their future, that they're going to reach their ceiling. But also making them understand that at the University of Notre Dame, you've got a tremendous network. And in a world where we have a society that's really living on their cell phones a lot, I try to challenge them to, like, every day they walk into the classroom, to get to know 2 or 3 new students every day in each classroom, because really your network is on campus in South Bend, and you've got future, CEOs, CFOs, class presidents, you've got future athletic directors. And so while you're going to school and getting your degree and trying to build out references, a lot of your references and your future network are there on campus with you. So it's really just encouraging them, also giving them some tips and clues as to how to reach out to clubs, but more than anything, staying open-minded. While you may want to do this particular field of professional sports, staying open-minded to getting your foot in the door and being a part of an organization, whether it's the NFL, NBA, NHL. I've helped kids. I've got one young man that's now the director of football operations with the Detroit Lions, that came to my class as a freshman at the University of Texas, and now Charlie Atkins is thriving in the NFL with the Detroit Lions, and so that's been a real gratifying part of this over the last 25 years, is just to try to help kids reach their dreams in professional sports, and it's something that I take a great passion in.
Okay, you've been in baseball for 25 years. What's the one story where you're like at some park or in some city or some town and you think to yourself, what in the world am I doing here?
Oh man, there's a lot of those, and that's really what kind of got me to do more. I started in baseball in 1989, working in the clubhouse for the Texas Rangers, the ticket office, the grounds crew, and worked my way up to scouting. But it wasn't long into my scouting career that I felt like you're going to have to do more to impact some lives and to find some gratification in this job, using my place in Major League Baseball to impact lives and help other kids. And that's really, Caracas, Venezuela would probably be one. Mm-hmm. Culiacan, Mexico would probably be another, where I'm sitting on a bus going from Mazatlan to Culiacan going, there's got to be more than this. And so that's really where I told myself, you've got to start, pouring into people and trying to impact people's lives the best way you can, outside of doing your job the very best that you can.
Okay, on the flip side of that, not necessarily from a personal relationship or an experience, but what is it about this job that you look at it, you're in a park or you're in a city, you're in a town, and you're like, this is why I still do what I do?
There's no question. And I never take for granted, and I say this most days. I told Mike this past week, I've got enough people on the outside of it, they're done, their careers are over, and I'm getting closer to that by the day, and it's going to be here before you know it. And I've never taken one day in Major League Baseball for granted. I've been with the White Sox for 1 year. I've always kind of enjoyed the challenge of the rebuild. I was with the Braves for 3 years, where it was a very high payroll and we were expected to win. And those were the days you really woke up and go, how am I really impacting here? So that's been the fun part of going to work for the White Sox and Jerry Reinsdorf and Chris Getz is we've got work to do, and it's going to be a challenge. And I'm really excited about the work we're doing and the challenge that we're going to get done. And so that's really that. And being in Chicago and being able to bounce over to South Bend as quickly as possible have probably been the 2 greatest parts of the job. But it really, the rebuild and just being a part of a game where so many special people, your relationships go forever. Mike and I were began our friendship in 2003, and we're still friends today. And that's the greatest part of it is the relationships and the ties that bind that never leave you.
Gene, the idea of overcoming injuries, Notre Dame fans understandably are very concerned about, we were just talking, there's 5 starters gone for the year. Baseball is a game of attrition. It's a game, that's where scouts really earn their money, is making sure that pipeline is flowing and that the injuries are not even to your best player. You have to keep going. What have you found over the years is the secret for championships to happen after a run of injuries, even to someone as important as Benjamin Morrison?
Yeah, that was a real blow to hear that Monday. It's hard, especially, when you're recruiting, your recruiting footprint is a little bit different than most schools, and the depth that you have is vital to your success. It becomes a little bit harder. And, in the games versus Clemson and Alabama in the playoffs, the people I was with, I'm like, watch the sidelines, watch the number of substitutions that Alabama and Clemson make versus Notre Dame, which speaks to the depth of your roster. But when you're a little different student athlete, student academic standard, that talks about your depth sometimes. But in a world where we have more sports science than ever, and players are bigger, stronger, faster than they have ever been, it's been very difficult to keep guys on the field a lot of times. And I think it's probably from an individual player standpoint, the toughest thing to manage is your health. But from a team standpoint, it's certainly become one of the more difficult things to manage, because we're always looking for the answers and always trying to investigate the reasons why these injuries are taking place. And it's very, very difficult when it happens, especially to a guy like Benjamin Morrison.
All right, I've got one last baseball question. You've been to parks everywhere around the country, like you said, in Venezuela, here, there, everywhere. We don't get out, and we're not able to see any minor league parks. But how spoiled are we in South Bend to have a facility like Four Winds Field? Because everybody talks about what a great park it is, and it got the best fans in class of this, that, and we don't have anything to compare it to. You do. So when you come here, are you like, I can't believe just the atmosphere and the environment that is Four Winds Field?
It's amazing, and if you'll indulge me, I've got a great story. My son pitched there for the Clinton Lumber Kings, and that day we were actually outside of Notre Dame Stadium walking around the campus, and the president of the Mariners, Jerry DiPoto, called me and said, we're going to release Tyler today. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to not tell him I'm with him. And he said, oh, you're in South Bend, we'll pitch him tonight. So he threw 4 shutout innings at that field, and he comes out, and I can hear the spikes coming up the ramp outside the third baseline, and he says, Dad, I'm not finished yet. And I said, well, let's go home. And he signed with the Braves a week later. So that's a really special ballpark for me. But one of the great ballparks, the employees there are second to none in the treatment of how they treat baseball people. And it is really a hidden gem in minor league baseball.
That's Gene Watson, Chicago White Sox Director of Player Personnel, longtime Notre Dame fan, wearing his Irish sweatshirt today. Gene, come on back and talk to us again. We'll talk a little more Notre Dame football when you come back with us.
Okay, guys. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Appreciate you.
Thanks, my man.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank
Safe
you.
travels.
Easiest segment of the day from the three of us. Give us one hot take, one score prediction for Notre Dame and Georgia Tech, Saturday, 3:30, ESPN. I got a phone call the other day from one Digger Phelps. You know what he said? On Monday, guy called me like 3 times. I didn't answer because I was at Marcus Freeman's press conference on Saturday or on Monday. I didn't answer again because I was working out, and I didn't answer again just because it was Digger. And I'm like, what do you want? What time's the game start on Saturday? 3:30, Digger. What channel is it on? And I'm like, Digger, it's 70 degrees on a Monday afternoon. Why are you worried about what's happening on Saturday? I said, it's on ESPN. Now, please just go outside. So ESPN, 3:30, Saturday, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. One of you two knuckleheads get to go first. Prediction, hot take.
I'll go.
You'll go first this time? Okay,
you've
yeah,
got
there you
a
go.
lot of deletion ahead of you. I'm going to say Leonard Moore gets his first career interception. He has started before, but he has yet to have, and he's got a forced fumble, but this will be his first career interception. And 28-23 Notre Dame.
Close one.
Yeah, I see like a failed 2-point conversion. Georgia Tech maybe. There's some separation. Georgia Tech makes a little push, and 28-23.
I like that. I'm going 27-17 Notre Dame, so 10-point win there. But again,
Cover.
Pretty close. Pretty close there. I'm going Mitchell Evans catches his first touchdown of the season. He has to do something at some point.
You stole my hot take.
Really?
Mitchell Evans, one of my 4 to watch this week
Yeah.
for Notre Dame, along with I'll say this, and you'll be like, boy, you really went on a limb in that one. Mitchell Evans on offense and Bryce Young on defense.
Oh.
You got to watch. I'll say Bryce Young gets his first career sack.
Doesn't have one yet?
I don't know. Does he?
It seems like it feels like it. Maybe a half sack in or something. I don't know.
I'm going to look.
He's done a lot of damage.
Yeah,
I like that one. Yeah, he's improving rapidly.
He has one quarterback hurry for the year.
Okay.
So Bryce Young will get his first quarterback sack. And my prediction is number 11, Notre Dame 45, Georgia Tech 13. Notre Dame takes another Notre Dame takes another step toward the great that Marcus Freeman demands. And I write about Marcus Freeman wanting Notre Dame to go from good to great in Friday's South Bend Tribune. So that'll wrap it up for this show. We'll be back next week to preview Navy, to talk about Georgia Tech, and who knows what else. Hopefully no beeps next week. Now remember, Jackson, you got 3.
I got 3. I'll take care of them.
That's Jackson Neal. That's Mike Berardino. I'm Tom Noy. This has been Pot of Gold.
This has been the South Bend Tribune's Pot of Gold podcast, your home for insightful Notre Dame football coverage and analysis.